Okay, we are live.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Welcome, everyone, and I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of interest? If there is, you can call it at any time during the meeting. And we're going into draft strategy, so I'll turn it over to Hiba. I would take it.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I apologize, you're going to hear my voice a lot this afternoon. I do apologize for that, but I'm happy to be here. It's really exciting. We are going to be presenting our draft strategies that the consultant and county planning staff have created as part of our climate change action plan. It's taken us a long time to get here, and it's been exciting work. We've invested a lot of time in looking at our data, looking at our emissions, analyzing it, understanding what policies exist across the region, doing an analysis of those, and then also looking internally, looking at the policies we currently have. Based on all that information and kind of what we hope to be, what some of our departments hope to be doing in the future, and what our community, especially our municipalities, or have planned through their strategic plans, we've developed this set of strategies that we think complements a lot of that work and really helps us to achieve our targets. So I'm here to present on those. There's 38 strategies, so but please feel free to interrupt me at any of the strategies. I will be going through each of them. Some of them are kind of straightforward. Some of them I will speak to a little bit more in detail, but feel free to interrupt me at each of the strategies if you have a question. We will be having a discussion session after each theme, so you can hold your questions till then as well. So I will start with my slides. And perfect. Sorry, one sec. Sorry, I'm having a bit of technical troubles. My apologies. There we go. And can everyone see the slides?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So before we start getting into some of the strategies, I wanted to kind of start this conversation today by framing our vision statement. This is a statement that the consultant presented at our last meeting. And this is one that we've developed, as they mentioned, with consultation with council, our internal working group, and our external working group. But this is our ultimate goal, is to achieve this statement. And through this plan and through the strategies, we hope to achieve that. So I wanted to highlight that today because a lot of our conversations will be framed around the intent of achieving this vision statement, but also our target goals that we hope to set out, our emissions goal, reduction goals that we hope to set out. So I do want to read it very quickly, just to kind of set our mindset around.
Sorry to interrupt, Hiba. It's showing the title slide on the PowerPoint, so.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
You're okay now, Hiba, but do you have two screens going?
I do, yeah.
That's what happened to me the other day as well. So it's something about having two screens. Sorry,
Okay.
The same thing happened, but we can see the vision statement slide
now. Yeah.
I was trying to save paper by printing my notes, so I have it on the other screen, which is okay. So maybe if I will try to lower this and then just to remember to bring it back up. But yes, so the vision statement, it's the County of Grey is a clear, visible climate leader. We're addressing climate change through not only county operations, but municipal operations and through the work with community groups. By embracing concepts of energy conservation, innovation solutions, promoting awareness, and working with really our residents and organizations that have already done a tremendous amount of work in climate change, we're going to hope to create a more sustainable community and a healthier future in Grey. And ultimately, it's the success of this plan is ensured by making sure that all of our strategies are equitable, accessible, and inclusive of every member of our community. So this is the framework that we wanted to start off with, and this is what we hope to achieve through our strategies. So I'm going to start with our corporate section. And so these are our 4 themes in our corporate section. The first one being vehicle, fleet, and equipment. And the objective, some of this information might be familiar to you as it was presented last time, but I just wanted to give a quick recap. So the vehicle, fleet, and equipment, this theme is ultimately to reduce our emissions and demonstrate our leadership by transitioning our corporate fleet. So this is primarily our paramedic services fleets and our transportation services fleets to low carbon vehicles, and furthermore reducing single passenger commuting practices within all of our county employees. Some of the strategies we've developed in this include, the first one is purchasing electric vehicles and equipment on an ongoing basis as an existing equipment and vehicles retire and replace. So the goal of this strategy is to really focus on a long-term adoption of electric vehicles into our capital planning. So as our transportation vehicles, as our EMS vehicles retire and are looking to be replaced, we want to make sure that we have a policy in place that focuses on purchasing electric vehicles and really transitioning out of gas. So one of the supporting strategies that was recommended was consider developing an electric car share program. And there's a link provided here, but the consultant has provided us with an example that was used in Quebec, where a municipality in Quebec bought electric vehicles for their employees, and on days when all of the vehicles weren't being used, they were able to be rented out or shared with members of the public. So it allows for car sharing outside of the corporate setting, and allows people who might not have access to this infrastructure have access to this infrastructure. So ultimately, this is a supporting strategy because it benefits us in the sense that we are able to provide electric vehicles to our employees as they travel around, as they need it, but then it also provides residents with access to this infrastructure that they might not have access to otherwise. So this is the first strategy that is part of this plan. The second one is to improve fleet monitoring and maintenance to ensure optimal fuel economy and emissions reductions. This is the goal of this is to improve and really monitor our how we use our fleet and how we use our vehicles, and really ensure that we're managing them to the best of our abilities. We're also managing our maintenance practices and monitoring and implementing new technologies that come into the market in terms of fleet and fleet electrification.
Excuse me, Hiba, I see Councillor Desai has his hand up.
For sure.
Sorry, I just wasn't aware if you wanted to hold questions till the end or answer
No,
them.
I'm happy to take them at any time.
Okay, so you just talked about electric vehicles and sort of switching over to electric vehicles. One of the concerns that I've heard, and mind you, the full disclosure, this is more in talking in general with constituents about electric vehicles and the future thereof in general, rather than specific to municipalities. One of the biggest concerns is with the size of electric vehicles and the batteries and sort of the because of the battery, what size we can expect an electric vehicle to be. There's concern around pickup trucks, for example, whether or not they can truly be an electric vehicle. The second concern is with the lack of electric, like EV infrastructure in terms of charging stations and so on. So my question through all of this is there a benefit to maybe making the investment in the infrastructure first, rather than getting the electric vehicle for the county first. Because if we have the infrastructure, we can spin it off into a tourism initiative as well, and attract a certain level of tourism to our county. But if we just get the electric vehicle without the infrastructure to support it, I worry that we would be putting the cart before the horse. Thank you.
That's a great question, and you're ahead of me. So that is something we are looking to address through one of our community strategies. But just to speak to it now, you're absolutely correct. There's the infrastructure, especially charging stations, and the connection of those infrastructure along major roads and arterial roads and our highways is critical. So there are ways that we're looking to develop that infrastructure. The county is currently a part of a regional EV charging development group. We don't have a formal name yet, but this group was created with the initiatives of 4 counties in our area to develop a mapping in regards to where the EV charging stations are currently and where they need to be implemented and what level of charging stations need to be developed. So do we need a level 1 charging station or a level 3 charging station? So this is definitely a concern, and there is a lot of funding available through this group and through FCM to develop some of that infrastructure. But I'm happy to speak to that a little bit more in our community section when we talk about kind of developing that EV infrastructure.
Madam Chair, if I might.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So this brings us back again to the conversation we were having at the previous meeting, and I talked about BYD, Build Your Dreams, and there may be other places as well, but this is exactly the sort of thing that they work with municipalities around. Number one, determining what are your needs. So what vehicles specifically do you need? Do you need a plow? Do you need pickup trucks? Do you need buses? You know, all of these things. And it gets down to the nitty gritty detail about how long does this bus need to run? How many people does it need to travel? How far does it need to go? You know, what are the loads? And then they figure out exactly, this is the vehicle that you need, and this is the size of battery it will need. But on top of that, getting into the infrastructure. So I think when we talk about infrastructure, there are 2 levels. One is infrastructure with respect to your, call it fleet. And given the area that we have in Grey County, that's a challenge, but you need to think about recharging your fleet, but also at the community level, if we are promoting more electric vehicles, then obviously it's beyond just our own fleet, but other vehicles, public vehicles as well that we need to support.
Yeah, and I think I should have mentioned this earlier, but these are all strategies. So these are just kind of what we've identified as areas of focus for each of these themes. Specific program development will be required as part of the implementation of this plan. So really, Warden Hicks is looking, once we start developing programs in partnership with our municipal partners and community partners, we will have to look at some of those specific details and kind of look at that as part of the implementation of each of these strategies.
Yeah, but before you go ahead, I see that Mr. Schertzer has his hand up, as does Councillor Gamble.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Carlton. And I think just exactly what Hiba just described and outlined, I think is that, you know, so far the strategies are organized around themes and based on corporate and community, and you'll see a lot of overlap. You also see a lot where there's some will need to come first before others. So part of this will be obviously having the initial discussion with the task force to see, are these feasible in terms of task force, in terms of, you know, proceeding with some of the strategies that Hib is going to highlight today, and then figuring out which ones we want to prioritize based on task force input as well. And then, as Hib indicated, coming up with a bit of that plan then in terms of, it could be over a period of a number of years implement some of these strategies, because we're not going to be able to do them all at once, because there's, as Hiba indicated, I think there's 38 strategies, and a lot of actions within those strategies. So we need to come up with a prioritization plan as well as an overall implementation plan, because like Hiba described, some will need to occur before we can move forward with some of the other strategies that are identified as part of the overall theme. So I guess just keep that in mind as we go through this, that in the end, we're going to have to work on that implementation prioritization plan. If once we get some initial feedback from the task force on whether or not these strategies are resonating with the task force, or if we need to look at some other strategies and actions in order to address some of those greenhouse gas emission reductions.
Thank you. And Councillor Gamble?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I guess my question is kind of, what is the time frame for this strategy? I know, like I realize you have to start at some point, but when I'm looking at it and read through it, there's a lot of this stuff that we're not actually to that point in technology, like the trucks and the graders that use a large amount of fuel. We don't have the technology to put electrics in them yet. They're working on them, but they're going to be a time down the road. I question that part of it. And for the car share, you know, Grey County is largely rural, and I just don't know how that system would work. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. You know, a lot of these strategies really develop and are built on our private sector partners. So really, it looks at some of the work that they're doing. So a lot of our energy strategies really look at working with Enbridge, for example, and looking at some of the work that they're doing around kind of energy efficiency. So it really, you know, the long-term, or we've identified in the strategies where, what time frame we think this can be achievable. So we've given it a short-term, a medium-term, and a long-term allocation. That really is kind of taking into consideration kind of resources, what's available on the market, how achievable it is, and so that's how we've determined that time frame. But ultimately, I think as changes happen in technology, we need to adapt our strategies to fit with those changes as well. So the implementation plan and the program specifically that are developed to implement each of these strategies will have to be adaptable and look at some of those changes that happen in the market.
Thank you.
Just kind of looking into the third strategy. This one focuses on developing a program to encourage municipal staff to carpool, use active transportation, and telecommute. So this is really focusing on a culture at the corporation. So really looking at educating our staff and employees about the importance of carpooling and using active transportation, and really also incentivizing them to take these opportunities. So you know, creating a program where there are incentives if they carpool an X amount of time a year, or if they walk to work, or if they go walk at lunch, really incentivizing them to do that, some of that more alternative sources of transportation versus relying just on the car. The other thing is also connecting our staff to resources or infrastructure. So making sure that if they are buying electric vehicles, there are charging stations, as mentioned, at our facilities. So making sure that if we are looking to encourage alternative forms of transportation, that there are the infrastructure and supports needed to really encourage them to take on to do that, some of that different modes of travel. There's already been some really good discussion. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts on kind of that specific theme.
I can only see 3 others besides me on my screen. So if anyone has any comments, please just speak up.
Awesome. Okay. Just looking at stationary energy. So the objective of this section of, or this theme, is to improve our energy efficiency and energy conservation at our corporate buildings. So really it's focusing on making sure that our infrastructure and our corporate buildings are the most efficient that they can be, most energy efficient that they can be. So the first one is implement a deep energy retrofit for corporate owned community housing. So this is specifically looking at sorry, I'm just flipping. This is specifically looking at how our affordable housing units and infrastructure owned by the housing department or managed by the housing department. And just to just clarify what a deep retrofit means, it means undertaking an extensive overhaul of your building systems so that you can save up to 60% of your energy costs. So this is a definition that was given by the federal government, and a deep energy, a deep retrofit could include measures such as significantly reconfiguring the interior of the infrastructure, replacing a roof, adding or rearranging windows for increased daylight, replacing the heating, ventilation, air conditioning system with renewable technology like ground source heat pump. So these are some of the examples that the federal government has provided of what a deep energy retrofit looks like. And in speaking with our internal working group and our housing staff, this is some of the work that they've already implemented. This is part of their capital upgrades to this infrastructure. They've already incorporated a lot of these technologies and these suggestions that were provided. So this is something that we're already focused on and something that we are doing. But the focus of this is to definitely retrofit our community or our corporate owned community housing infrastructure to make them the most efficient. Sorry. Our next strategy includes...
Sorry, Hiba, I see Councillor Desai has his hand up again.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a quick question with the stationary energy, I guess. I like the fact that we're looking at it from the perspective of our community housing. My question is there a way that we can work with, I believe it's George and Bluffs and Chatsworth that have the biodigester? Is there a way that we can work with those two municipalities and build housing around that? Because I do believe that the biodigester is an asset if used correctly, and I do think this is an asset that the county can sort of get in on. So can you expand on that a little bit, and if there are any possibilities or opportunities there, Hiba? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And again, this is something that we're looking at in our community section of our plan, but there hasn't been any conversation with the specific group you've identified in terms of collaborating and kind of integrating some of that energy source for our corporate buildings. But I think that's a great idea and something that we can look into capitalizing on that source. It's something that we're looking to hopefully create educational resources in our program for our ag community and members of our community to implement on private property. But it's not something that we looked at connecting that energy source to corporate buildings. But that's something that we can definitely look into.
Thank you.
Our fifth strategy includes requiring all new municipal and corporate owned buildings to construct to an above building code energy efficiency standards and to be climate resilient. So really this focuses on establishing a policy that requires all of our buildings to be built to a certain energy standard, targeting net zero, and really focusing on kind of what the federal government and the FCM is defined as energy efficient and high energy standards. So our goal is to ultimately, as our corporate owned buildings come up for retrofits, or there's renovations needed to our buildings, or new capital projects are taken up to develop new buildings, we hope to retrofit them and make sure that energy efficiency is implemented as part of that redevelopment or that development. Strategy 6 includes conduct energy audits and address causes of energy loss in corporate buildings and infrastructure. This all kind of speaks to the same kind of idea of kind of really managing and understanding where there's major loss of energy and kind of managing that and make sure that we're doing yearly energy audits to really assess where those losses are occurring and so that we can put in retrofits to prevent that loss of energy in our corporate buildings. In strategy 7, we want to consider opportunities for increased renewable energy generation, waste recovery, and efficient energy production in corporate buildings. So this kind of speaks to what Councillor Desai was talking to, but really look at how we can develop programs that allows for more renewable energy to exist on our corporate buildings. So look at whether we can implement solar in our buildings to or other forms of energy, such as the biodigester that was mentioned, to help reduce our energy cost and really incorporate more efficient energy sources into our corporate buildings. So part of this will be to implement that as new buildings as we build new buildings or as we retrofit our existing corporate infrastructure. Strategy 8 includes establish a zero residential or county building, demonstration building that are high visibility and open to public to promote education about retrofit options and opportunities. So this is very similar to the ag demonstration site that's being developed near Grey Roots. This is really looking at developing a residential or a demonstration building that really identifies some of the technologies that are being developed within in regards to energy efficiency and how they can be implemented in residential commercial buildings. So the goal here is to have a site where people can come and the public can come and learn and really promote education and retrofit opportunities. Lastly, we hope to speak to retrofitting our street lights and outdoor lighting with LED lights, which are also compliant with dark sky initiatives. So really looking at upgrading all of our street lights to more energy efficient LED lights. Is there any questions or thoughts?
If anyone has any questions, please just go ahead and speak because I can't see everyone.
Moving into our waste, the theme of waste. So really looking at waste production at our corporate buildings. It's the objective is to reduce corporate waste across all our operations and really encourage change and create a culture of conservation. So a majority of the strategies or the two strategies here really focus on education and really creating awareness around how waste is produced and how we can be more aware of what happens once that waste is produced and how it affects our environment. So the first, the strategy or strategy 10 in the waste section is conduct a corporate waste audit and develop a waste policy to reduce waste from our corporate facilities. So really, again, this majority of this includes educating employees about how waste is produced, and how we can reduce by potentially incorporating practices such as composting at each of our facilities. So creating composting sites in collaboration with our maintenance staff, so that we aren't adding to our landfills. Other strategies include banning plastic water bottles and encouraging reusable water bottles, and putting in infrastructure such as water refill stations, providing green bins in washrooms for paper towels, and banning single-use plastics for any corporate food services, which is something we've already done, so which is great, and we hope to expand on some of the initiatives that we've kind of established already. The second strategy includes encouraging waste prevention by developing resources, guidelines, and educational materials for staff on how to reduce waste. This is pretty straightforward, but the goal here is really showing our employees the life cycle of a product, and really helping them understand how what happens to, for example, a water bottle once you're done using it. How does it go into the landfill? How does it break down? Really kind of trying to show the impact of that purchase, and how we can reduce our waste by maybe making alternative choices. So this strategy is really focusing on education, providing resources, and developing guidelines around kind of alternative products or sources that people can use to reduce waste. Are there any thoughts on that? Just kind of moving into municipal culture. This theme really focuses on kind of integrating climate change considerations into all of our planning processes and kind of decision-making processes, and really kind of encourage thinking about sustainability and kind of conservation through all of our decision-making lens. So it's really, we want to promote conservation and emissions reductions through kind of making sure that we view all of our through this climate lens. So some of the strategies we've developed here is develop and implement a climate lens policy in which all municipal or county operations are reviewed through a climate lens to ensure that climate considerations are being prioritized as part of the approval process. So some of this includes integrating climate change considerations into our Grey County Asset Management Plan, training staff on the importance of GHG mitigation and energy efficiency, and explore a kind of adding climate change or the theme of the environment in all of our reporting to council and internally, to make sure that any decision that we're making, we're considering that through a climate lens. The third strategy is to retain or appoint an energy manager that oversees the implementation of our corporate and community strategies. So this individual would be responsible for the implementation of this plan and really kind of guiding the work with our partners. So helping municipalities as they take on climate adaptation plans, take on work to create climate plans, climate action plans at the municipal level, and really facilitate that conversation between the county, the public, and the municipalities. They would be critical in implementing some of these strategies and developing those programs. So we hope that as someone whose goal and priority is the climate change action plan, they will have the resources to really implement and take this plan. And really help guide our departments through this process as well. So make sure that there is someone at the department or at the corporate level that can help guide some of that work if there isn't someone available otherwise. The last strategy focuses on kind of awarding our staff and promoting a culture of conservation. So really creating programs that incentivize the staff to kind of take up conservation work, either at work or at home, and really celebrate some of that initiatives they're trying. We really believe, or I really believe, that even a small change, even just walking to work one day is as valuable as a large scale change. So really kind of encouraging those small changes and shifts towards conservation and incentivizing them to do that. So this really focuses on developing a culture that encourages that kind of behavioral change. Are there any discussions on that?
I see Councillor Desai has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to sort of expand on the last part that Hiba said, you know, if a number of small changes are made, at the end of the day, a big change is an expression of a number of small changes that have been made. So I think that's a great point, and that's definitely something we can and we should encourage at our corporation. Thanks.
If I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. One of the conversations that I've had recently is with the fellow CAOs for all of our member municipalities, and hearing from them, and you know, considering this work, the corporate strategy, I wonder if there's an opportunity and if the committee would be supportive of, you know, taking a look at this and from a broader all of the Grey County municipalities perspective. Certainly, and I don't think that there's anything in here that excludes a broader participation from the member municipalities, but I do think it would be interesting and useful to explore opportunities for us to all work together to utilize some of these things. So at our next CAO's meeting on February 12th, we wanted to go through some of this information, see where there's alignment between some of the things that have been presented and will be presented to you today, and work that has been done by the member municipalities. For those that haven't gotten too far into this, do they see themselves in any of these strategies and taking a piece of this and moving it forward within their own communities? At the end of the day, I think if the more that we can all work together and have kind of a united front on this, I think there's a kind of a cumulative impact that can come out of all of this if everybody's kind of pursuing some common themes. And I'd be interested to hear from the committee members if you felt that there was merit in moving in that direction.
I'll speak. I know that Georgian Bluffs is just getting started on our plan, and I think there would be huge merit in that, working together going forward, rather than each of us duplicating one after the other what the other one's done. Councillor McQueen, I see you have your hand up. Please go ahead. You're muted.
Huh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it just wasn't my connection there. Great idea. I know Grey Highlands has been working on this, and I think if Hiba wanted to make another slide and says action to coordinate or to I don't know, the word coordinate comes to mind. And work with the lower, collaborate.
Yes.
Maybe that's another word. And so what you mentioned, Madam CEO, is perfect. And just make that as another slide. And that's part of the objective of what Grey County is doing, is reaching out to the lower tiers and, you know, see where they are and see if we can help them along. And I know Grey Highlands, we've had it in place now, I'm going to say maybe a year and a half. I know time flies with COVID, but it was one of our objectives of this term.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's so, I know we just went out, we had I think part of our committee is we have a number of public, including municipal councillors, like councillor or deputy mayors on there. And so that's, we went through some members. We just went out to look at some more. So absolutely, it's collectively come up with ideas. And I think for part of the, if we're looking at maybe volume buying or volume purchasing, or collectively, I look at charging stations, collectively, each zone or each area, look at it, maybe a multiple grant application, maybe to the federal government, who knows, all those kind of things. I think it's all good. So I definitely agree with that. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have any comments? And please just speak up because I can't see you.
So maybe I'll speak up now, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Warden.
So I did all the comments made already. It reminds me of sort of what we were doing with CIP, right?
Yes.
And having, sort of a collective view. The other thing is, when we look at our sort of targets, what can we control and what can't we control? This is another way of helping to reach that sort of overall target by, encouraging, collaborating, working with. And perhaps the lower tiers as well might have some ideas that would make what we're trying to do even better. Some things that maybe we haven't even thought about. So it could go both ways. I like that idea.
Thank you. And if I may, just by way of a follow-on, certainly what HIBA has and the consultants have provided with us is some strategies, but right now these are strategies. They're high-level actions. They set us in a direction to look and see if we can pursue emissions reduction, etc. In conversation with everyone, I'm hoping that we can try and ground these strategies then into specific actions. And, to the comment that was made earlier, certainly, we have to start somewhere, and we'll start with the things that make sense to do that are achievable right now, but with an eye on the future. And as technology changes and different funding and programming opportunities become available to us, we'll have already had the benefit of this discussion, and we can, move forward with trying to take advantage of new things as they come along.
Madam Chair, if I might, I think it's, as always, it would behoove us to look for the low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
The things that we can, quickly do and easily do and isn't all that expensive, just to sort of build some momentum and some wins. So there we are.
Yeah, and just to kind of speak to that a little bit, a lot of these strategies were developed with the thought that some of the stuff that we're already doing. So in our community transportation section, we already have a cycle master plan, and implementing that plan and providing funding into that plan will help us achieve our transportation goals. So a lot of this was developed with work that we're already doing at the county, and really kind of trying to amplify that work and really provide some resources to those policies and some of those programs that already exist. I will speak to a little bit of implementation towards the end, but Kim is completely correct in saying that this is really a collaboration between municipalities and the county, and really looking at how we can work together to implement this. A lot of the strategies is going to, I hope that they were developed with the idea that municipalities will take them and develop programs that fits with their needs. So it's really, these strategies are developed with the idea that they're very amendable and adaptable to the context that they're working in. So we have laid out suggestions and provided it's examples of what other municipalities in Ontario have done, but ultimately the program that's developed will look different across our 9 municipalities potentially, or and they can be very different. So I think they're meant to be kind of a guiding strategy, and then the programs that we developed as part of them will be more strategic and focused towards the needs of our communities.
Madam Chair, if I may, it's Tom.
Please go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. I guess what I was just wondering, just picking up what the warden had said, but I think what we want to do is once we move into this process deeper is to find out what might be a little more achievable even at the municipal level as well, because I think as a whole, if we got all municipalities that could take some 2 or 3 items that are achievable at that level, then, you know, yes, the county's a little bit different, obviously, but I think that's what we should, when we do get there, is, you know, 2 or 3 items, because I know everybody's anxious to do it, but if we to accomplish the same goal, but we found 2 or 3 items, maybe even be a larger list, but I think it would certainly, they'll complement what you're trying to do. Thank you.
Excellent ideas. Yes. Thank you.
If there aren't any other thoughts, I will move into the community section. In our community section of our plan, we have 7 themes that we've developed. These were developed in consultation with the community and with our groups, and they identified these areas of focus. So we've really tried to speak to what the community has identified concerning areas, and really tried to develop strategies to address some of those concerns. Looking at our buildings theme, we want to prioritize energy conservation by building cleaner and more efficient buildings, really working with our development community to implement some of our energy efficient technology, and really try to create programs that allow residents to implement energy efficiency technology within their commercial or residential buildings. Our first strategy looks at our first and second strategy. They're the same strategy. The first one looks at residential buildings. The second one looks at commercial buildings. So I'm going to speak to them as one, but they are different in the sense that they target different groups. But the idea here is to develop a voluntary retrofit program where for residential and commercial buildings, primarily focused on older stocks of residential and commercial buildings, and give them opportunity to implement retrofits to the buildings. So one example is if a homeowner would like to install solar onto their property or onto their home, then there would be funding available through this program to implement that. And some of what we've seen, some funding sources we've seen across different municipalities that have implemented is they've implemented it through local improvement charges. So essentially, the municipality or the county would provide them with funding to implement or to do this retrofit to their home. And then as part of the loan, they would pay it back through property taxes. So this is just one example of a funding a scheme that was created by other municipalities. There are a lot of grants that are available, especially through the Green Municipal Fund. They're offering up to 80%, depending on the program that's created, to implement or create this strategy. So there is a lot of opportunities, but the goal of this strategy is to provide funding for residential and commercial buildings. And if they want to do upgrades to those buildings to make them more energy efficient, we would be able to provide that funding source. Strategy 3 includes facilitating the implementation of an industrial efficiency best practices such as energy audits, energy management system standards, energy management information systems, and benchmarking and employee awareness. This strategy is primarily focused on educating our and really providing resources to our industrial sector and what are some of the best practices that can be implemented to become more energy efficient, providing them with resources that allows them to do energy audits and really implement some of those energy management systems. There are a lot of this work is being done by our partner, private sector partners such as Enbridge. So in speaking with them and doing some consultation work with them, they would love to provide some of these education resources to our industrial partners to kind of implement that within their business. Strategy 4 includes the development and the implementation of a voluntary regional green development standard with incentives to encourage above building code energy performance in new buildings using absolute performance targets or a sustainable green development checklist. So this really focuses, this is a bit of this strategy kind of speaks to land use, the theme of land use as well, but really developing a standard or a development checklist that forces or encourages our development community to build a new development to a certain energy standard. And if I may, I wanted to show you an example of one that was done by Halton Hills. They're kind of an example that's shared widely when we talk about green development checklists because they have won several awards for the checklist that they've created, and they've been working on this for a long time. So this is something usually when we talk about green development standards or green development checklists, they usually are one of the first municipalities we speak to. So I'm just going to share my screen so that I can show you what a standard would look like. So what they would do is that they have developed this green development standard checklist. So they have created criterias in different sections that and different kind of different criteria that can be implemented as part of their development. So for one example, supply all Energy Star compliant light fixtures as part of the development. So if a developer comes in and they are able to implement light fixtures, all Energy Star light fixtures, they'll get 2 points. And then so there's different sections that they've created. So there's water conservation and quality, community design, air quality, innovation, and other green infrastructures. And if it's a low residential, as this is the example for low residential development, the minimum points required is 33. So it gives developers the opportunity to pick between different criteria and different retrofits that they can implement as part of their development that they need to achieve for that development to be approved by the municipality. So this is just one example that was developed, but there are very different green standards that exist. The City of Toronto has one that looks holistically at kind of all different policies. So it really depends on kind of how detailed oriented we want the program or the development to be, or the checklist to be. But this is a great strategy because it really forces us to look at how we're developing, how we can develop them to be more develop our future infrastructure to be more sustainable, and kind of what we can implement into our development. This is one that's already also been really well supported. At least the Halton Hills example has been well supported by the development community, because it provides flexibility in what they need, what they can implement. So they don't have to do everything. They have opportunities of different criteria that they can implement in depending on what they're doing and what their development criteria might be. So it is one that the development community has kind of been very supportive of, just because it does provide them with that flexibility. Looking at our fifth strategy, we want to develop a county-led energy efficiency awareness program across all sectors for property owners and tenants. This is primarily an education strategy, so really looking at providing resources, guidelines, connecting members of our community to different organizations that are doing work around energy efficiency, and making sure that people are aware of different programs and technology that exists that they can implement within their homes or their businesses. I'm happy to take some questions if there are any on that section.
Are there any questions or comments from anyone?
Moving into our transportation theme. This theme looks at transitioning Grey County's transportation sector to low carbon vehicles and increased participation in active transportation. Really, this is helping, the focus of this theme is to help our community recognize the importance of moving away from gas powered vehicles and adopting more low carbon vehicles and encouraging active transportation. Our first strategy is one that I think we've already really started doing a lot of work in implementing. Stephanie Stewart at the county has been doing a lot of work in regards to this, but it's really looking at expanding our rural transportation system and promoting public transportation and rideshare programs. So this focuses on kind of developing that transportation system that can be utilized by a multitude of people, and so they don't have to rely on their gas-powered vehicles. Strategy 7 looks at considering developing an electric car share program owned and operated by the county or member municipalities, where electric vehicles are used throughout the weekday by municipal staff, and then available during weekends and weekdays to residents to rent when vehicles are not in use. So this example was already kind of presented in our corporate section, but really making sure that we have the infrastructure available for our employees or our staff at the county, and then once that infrastructure is not being used, make that available to residents. As I mentioned earlier, we are on a regional EV charging station group. This group major focus is on connecting all of the charging stations across the 4 counties. So it's Huron, Bruce, Dufferin, and Simcoe. We've come together to kind of assess and really map out where the EV charging stations exist currently. There isn't a lot. Really, the map right now shows that we don't have a lot of tier 3 charging stations in our 4 counties. So really, it's looking at how we can expand that infrastructure across the 4 regions, and really looking to kind of make that infrastructure more connected. Part of this is that it can be county owned, or we can connect with private private organizations that can also develop this infrastructure for us and lease that out to the public. So really making those connections and kind of finding ways to develop this infrastructure across the county is going to be critical if we want to encourage members of members of the public to invest in electric vehicles long term.
Yeah, but just a quick question. When you reference tier 3, is that the fast charging stations is what you're referencing there? Okay, thank you.
Yes, so there are 3 tiers that are kind of the standard. Tier 3 is the high, like it's a supercharger, they call it, where it takes in a matter of an hour or two, you can have your vehicle charged, but it does require a higher intensity of infrastructure. The electricity and all of that needs to be of a certain standard to implement that. So it's not something that's common. It's more seen by widely in the GTHA area, but there are some that are being implemented in our area, but they're primarily Tesla charging superchargers, which cannot be used by any other vehicle other than Tesla's. So we're looking to, this group is looking to implement tier 3 charging stations that can be universally used.
Thank you.
Moving into our 8th strategy, encourage the adoption of electric vehicles by transitioning Gray to electric vehicle ready through the installation of EV charging infrastructure. So really, again, this kind of just speaks to what we were speaking to and encouraging electric vehicle use and really getting members of the public to understand kind of what some of this technology is and buying it in. And part of that includes kind of expanding this infrastructure. Strategy 8 includes encouraging active transportation and mode shift from single occupancy vehicles within the county. The majority of this strategy is really looking at the education piece. So really looking at how we can encourage members of the public to understand the importance of active transportation and reducing our single occupancy vehicles. The other portion is really kind of, as I mentioned, we also have a lot of plans already in place, such as the cycling trails master plan, the recreational trails master plan, that really are looking to address this concern of encouraging active transportation and shifting away from single occupancy vehicles. So we want to, those plans are already kind of working towards achieving this goal. So we really want to support that work that's happening with those plans. And really then focus on also the education piece and really helping residents understand how impactful single occupancy vehicle trans movement can be. I'm happy to take any questions on this theme.
So in actual fact, COVID has really helped all of us with our single vehicle trips, because we normally would have all driven into the county building from different directions. And now we're all sitting at home and saving that car trip. Are there any other comments or questions for Hiba in this area?
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good discussion. The one question I had, and I know the province was working at it, was EV, electric vehicles and scooters, or sort of electric, I don't know what, I can call them scooters. I don't know what else to call them. And that I know the province was working on a trial or like a draft trial run or whatever. I just wondered, is there any information? I'm thinking more of our urban settings where, it's urban setting and they have paved shoulders. They get on a little EV scooter, scoot down to the grocery store and scoot back. I guess that's why they call them scooters. And but I just wondered if that's something is that where that is. Maybe Madam CEO knows or somebody else knows. I just wondered on the. I'm pretty sure the province, and maybe I can follow up with Amo as well. that I know that they were at one time looking at what like, if that was a possibility as a permanent opportunity.
If I may, I think I saw something recently that was open for consultation with regard to maybe different classes of those power assisted scooters. Anyway, we can look into that and come back, because I believe that there's some ongoing discussion about maybe kind of permitting the lower scale of them more or less as of right. So let me see about that.
And the other question I had, Madam Chair, was well, one is you see over in Europe, you see a lot of cycling and biking, even in urban spots like Toronto and stuff. You see a lot of cycling and cycling lanes. So I think that's something that has to take a mindset if that's something for our urban settings. I mean, if I got on a bike, it'd take me probably 2 days to get to Owen Sound, but it just for our urban setting and that sort of thing. And the other question with regards to the shared vehicles of EVs from the public, I guess another question I have is there's liability, cleanliness. I mean, especially going through COVID and stuff like that now. Does somebody clean the car, or is it disinfected? Is it, does somebody have to have a line of credit or some deposit? So if there's a damage or something, or do they have to provide a waiver that they have insurance? Because I know if you go to anywhere else on a holiday, you can use your own insurance, but you have to provide a piece of paper that says that you do have insurance and you're insurable and all that kind of stuff. So maybe you don't have the answer, but I just asked those questions in the sense that it's not a bad idea. I know they have car share and bike share and other share things, but I just don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of research has been done in that area on other aspects of sharing things. So just some comments there. Thank you.
Councillor Gamble has his hand up.
Yeah, in all of this is all good. It's very interesting, but you still got to generate power. So if you put more chargers into the system and what have you, you've got to have more power in the grid via nuclear power or whatever. What is the thought behind generating more power to charge whatever?
So sorry, if I understand your question correctly, do we have enough power to create tier 3 charging stations? Is that correct?
Well, not just that. It's the home chargers. It's the chargers of the batteries for vehicles. If we go that way, all this you got to have hydro to charge these things. So where do we get that? We got to get it from nuclear power generation or however. I know that train of thought hasn't entered into any of this. I just wondered, what is the thought on it?
Yeah, so it would, I don't think I have a clear answer. Maybe if Randy or Scott have maybe a thought on this, but really it's looking at connecting to existing grids and really capitalizing on what exists currently. I know tier 1 charging stations, you can plug into to an outlet at home and charge your car that way. It takes like 3 days, 4 days, but it is possible. So it really looking on what exists within their grid and then kind of working with our partners at Bruce Power to kind of understand where we can kind of develop this infrastructure further with what's available.
If I can build on what Hibba indicated, I think energy conservation and some of these programs kind of go hand in hand too, right? So we'll be saving energy in terms of if we're able to conserve serve energy, but you're right, Councillor Gamble, some may be more energy use with respect to things like electric charging vehicles. So we need to make sure we have the hydro network in order to support these initiatives. But those, I think, will go kind of in tandem with energy overall conservation and hopefully reduction in energy use on for some of the initiatives, and then some obviously making sure that we have the hydro infrastructure to support as well as the hydro supply to support what HIBA's identified in terms of these tier 3 charging stations, as well as other initiatives to support those. So I'm thinking there likely be hopefully a balance, but that's something we can definitely explore further with the consultant to see how they've approached that, from an overall energy supply perspective.
Thank you.
Maybe I can add to that discussion. I noted I attended a session, Westerio, I believe it was, where we were talking about this very subject. And it seems to me that the energy sector is well ahead of us on this thinking. What I remember from that discussion is that they're not particularly worried about some massive increase in demand for energy. And that this sort of transformation is definitely on their radar.
Yeah, just kind of speak to that. We had through the work with the group, we haven't identified any concerns from the energy sector or our energy providers. They're well aware of some of the kind of work that we're doing, and there hasn't been any concerns identified through them yet. But that is something that obviously requires further consultation and more detailed work with them to make sure that where we are implementing some of these stations, it is feasible to do so. Just moving along. So our next theme is waste, and this theme looks at collaborating with and supporting our lower tier municipalities to divert waste from landfills and kind of really establish alternative ways to remove waste from our economy and kind of find alternative spaces for it. So one of the strategies we've identified is consider developing a reuse it or rebuild center that accepts donations of unwanted household items and discarded construction materials for resale. All of the proceeds can be used to fund community development and social services. So there is one that currently exists in Grey Bruce. It's as the Habitat for Humanity program where they collect and they collect large used items such as furniture, appliances, art, rugs, tools, supporting equipment, and then they find and then they resell it. And all of that infrastructure stays within the community. But this is a good way. It's a little different from other kind of like Goodwill or Value Village, because this is primarily looking at bigger goods and really household goods that end up in the landfill, or there isn't a great way to recycle them if there isn't a robust recycling system available in the municipality. So this is one good way of kind of taking those unwanted household items and finding an alternative space for them than our landfills.
Well, Madam Chair.
Councillor McQueen, go ahead.
So great point. And I would even want to maybe think about taking it to the next step is when people take out building permits, especially for renovation, it just blows my mind, the stuff that they buy a house that's 5 years old and they go in and they just gut it and put all new. And there's new kitchens, there's this, there's furniture, and it fills up our landfill. It's stuff I've seen. It's just crazy. And I don't know if there's a way that, because, people that are on fixed incomes would love a 5-year-old kitchen, sink and all, so it's just some way of promoting that through the building side, because it's not just new, because especially now with this huge onslaught of people buying, like the real estate is going nuts, and people renovating, and even so, a 2x4 is almost $2 a foot or whatever. It's gone crazy. So even reusing material. That just saves our landfill. It saves the energy to make that stuff if it can be reused or repurposed or all that kind of stuff. And it's just something that to tuck in your mind on this slide is if there's some way that it can be brought through on the renovation side, or even people take out a brand new permit, they'll just knock a house down and they'll haul it all to the dump. Well, that fills up our landfill, and it's, you know, that's all energy. It's filling up our space. It's going to be repurposed. You know, I'll give you an example. Sometimes the Mennonites, depending on the circumstance, if it's a good barn or something, they'll go in and they'll strip it down and they'll reuse it, you know. And I mean, it has to be quality to the point of reusing it for either structural or non-structural, or, but I tell you, it's, I mean, some people put it on Kijiji, sometimes people advertise it, but Habitat for Humanity is a great opportunity. And I think they'll even pick it up some places, right? Appliances, furniture, you know, I'll give you a quick example. I have a number of driveways I clear, and it's across the escarpment, and one place they're renovating it, and they're throwing good furniture in the dumpster. The dumpster's going once a week full of furniture, full of this and full of that. And it just makes your head spin. Anyway, it's just something that if somebody else can use it, it's just another way of providing. It saves having to rebuild it again, or somebody can make use of it. It just sorry, I'm going a little bit further on that, but I just can't. Maybe it's my Scottish roots that I come out of me, but anyway, just a point that if we can try to reroute that stuff, that's so important. Thank you.
I have to say, I love your passion. It's awesome. Yeah, we haven't looked at programs that specifically look at building materials, but that's an absolutely great example of looking at how we can divert some of those building materials from construction sites and stuff like that away from the landfill. Specifically, this program we were speaking to was furniture and kind of larger materials, but I think that's a really, really important point that you've made and something we should look into. Our next strategy includes collaborate with member municipalities to determine how the county can best support their waste diversion initiatives, while encouraging resource sharing and other methods to manage waste collectively amongst all Grey municipalities. So I know there's been a bit of conversation around this at the county council, but really a lot of our consultation with municipalities and kind of with the public has really been what can the county do to help municipalities manage their waste. And really a part of this work that we want to do is learn kind of what the municipalities need and what we can do to support that. So I know Kim is looking to bring a report forward, but really the strategy kind of wants to support municipalities in any waste diversion initiatives that they want to take on. I know, for example, the municipality of Meaford, through their work with their CAC group, is their Community Climate Action Group. They're looking at a styrofoam recycling program that takes away styrofoam from their landfills. So really it's looking at how the municipality can, or how the county can support that waste diversion initiatives, really also looking to see if we can help in developing green bin programs, helping municipalities connect to private sector organizations that can provide funding or resources. So really kind of trying to find alternatives and encouraging municipalities to kind of think about waste management. The other section of this also includes education and kind of working with members of our community as well. So helping develop composting, teaching or educating members of the public around the importance of composting, in-home composting, and kind of those kind of initiatives that also reduce waste and don't put that burden on our municipal infrastructure. And then just kind of this goes right into strategy 12, really focusing with working with our local municipalities to develop a countywide public awareness campaign that speaks to waste reduction and improves food literacy. So really a lot of what we're seeing is that there is a lot of food waste that is ending up in our landfills. And so kind of educating on how easy it is to compost, compost or try to reduce some of that waste, and kind of how we can kind of educate the public that, you know, as a consumer, the importance of taking ownership over the waste that you produce, and not letting it just kind of putting all of the responsibility on our infrastructure or our municipalities, but really also being kind of proactive in preventing that waste from being created. So education is going to be a key cornerstone of this theme, because it really, the more we know about what happens with our waste, where it ends up, how we're producing it, less likely to create it. So it really starts with the individual. So this strategy kind of focuses on that as part of the work that we're hoping to do here as waste reduction. Are there any thoughts on that?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
It's Tom here. I guess one of the questions I have is, you know, plastics, obviously we know the problem there, but we put it into recycle and it goes to the sorting station. I can assure you that 75% of that is going back into the landfill because there's no market in the plastic. So that's something that I think needs to be addressed if we want to be, you know, taking care of this. But there's no market for plastic bottles right now. That market's gone. The virgin is almost as cheap as it is to produce or to rework recycled material. So how do we get over that? For, you know, we're doing our due diligence, thinking we are putting in the blue boxes. People are using less, but they are. You know, it's part of our nature to have a water. They put it in, and then it just gets dumped right back into the system. So how are we going to head that off? Thank you.
Councillor Gamble, do you have your hand up again?
Yes. Am I on?
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess, Sue, you probably will recognize this discussion, but the degenerator, it's been an issue since we built it. It's never made money. We can't get the stock for it. And for that fact, we can't, it's just a losing proposition. And all of this stuff seems to make it work, we've got to have some capital put into it. And I guess my issue is, where are we going to get that capital? Sure, we can take the product and we can use it, but we haven't got the money to do that. And this is for lower tier municipalities. That's a very major issue. I don't know how we get around it. Thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Please go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. Just to Councillor Gamble's statement there, I think that there's certainly a wholesome discussion that needs to be brought forward. You know, we have neighboring municipalities, and you know, if it's a matter of diversion and you have the system that's in place, this is what we need to be discussing. I think would be at all levels, municipality right to up to the county. That's you know, if there's a solution there to handle some of it, I think that's a step in the right direction. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and just kind of, I think part of the work that we want to do is really consult our municipalities and have those conversations on what is required. So I think the program or the policy that we develop will have to really be focused on kind of the needs of each municipality, and I think it requires further research. So that's definitely something that we will be looking into.
Mr. Scherzer?
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with Hiba that's, you know, I think we'll hopefully have that discussion, as Kim indicated, with the local CEOs, starting some of that dialogue and discussion in terms of, you know, what do they see as action items that are feasible at the local municipality? What do they want to tackle? These are some perfect examples that have been highlighted by both Councillor Gamble and Councillor Hutchison in terms of to explore further with local municipalities. Back on the plastics one, I think there's definitely some initiatives that the province, I think, is working on with respect to working with producers to at least have them look at obviously reducing the waste that is produced before it hits the consumer, as well as looking at that the producers would have to pay then to help support some of that waste. So I know there's some work being done at the provincial level around waste. I'm not fully involved or no, but I know that there is some work around the producer level. So right from who makes the plastic bottle, and then who should pay for disposing that at some point. And so and making that go back on the producer to help support that. So that is some work that can be looked at in the context of overall waste strategies to see where the province is going with some of that work, and see how it can align with some of the strategies that was highlighted here.
That was one of the things at Roma this morning that Mr. Urich commented, that the final regulations on recycling are to be posted, I think he said, by the middle of February. So hopefully by then we know what those regulations are around producer responsibility.
That's been awesome. Yeah, this is some great discussion. Just kind of moving into our agricultural theme. The focus of this theme is really to prioritize the needs of our farming community and provide supports to and resources and tools that helps them become implement and become more sustainable. So some of the strategies we've identified, and a lot of the strategies in the agricultural section are education and connecting our farming community to resources. So we're primarily focused on kind of providing supports. So the first strategy includes working with our regional partner organizations to establish a capacity building network that deliver forums, training sessions, resources, and supports, knowledge sharing among farmers in the county and beyond. One of the first things I heard in my consultation with the ag community, and more specifically ag organizations that exist, is that they are already doing work around climate change and sustainability, and really doing a lot of work in terms of providing farmers with supports. So I think there is a potential gap in access and understanding where these resources exist. So really the strategy focuses on in connecting those gaps and really connecting farmers and the ag community to these resources and training sessions that exist. And then if there are gaps there's more supports needed, the county would be able to provide that to our farming community. So this is primarily working with with organizations such as ALICE, the Grey Bruce Ag Federation, really and supporting the work that they are already doing in terms of like sustainability and climate action. Strategy 14 includes act as a facilitator to encourage the adoption of biogas production by agricultural community within the community. So this is an interesting one. Biogas is a relatively new technology and kind of a new idea that's been kind of come to the forefront as climate change has become more of a conversation. So biogas, specifically for members that aren't aware, is just kind of it's another word for I always struggle with this word, anaerobic digestion. Essentially, it's a process. I apologize, I butchered that. It's a process of fermentation of waste, which is digested by microbes to produce methane gas. And this waste can be either converted into bio fertilizer and used on the fields, or the biogas itself can be used interchangeably with the natural gas. So again, with my conversations with Enbridge, they've created a new program where if there is a biogas plant or biogas infrastructure, they want to work with the owner to capitalize on that gas that's being created, and then implement that into the gas lines, or kind of incorporate that into their system, so that energy source is available to more residents. So the county here wants to obviously first and foremost be an education resource on kind of this infrastructure, but really also connect residents who want to implement this infrastructure on their properties, or kind of develop this infrastructure to resources and programs that exist, and look at potentially through a study or further through an adaptation plan on developing this infrastructure on a wider scale. What the one good thing about this infrastructure is that it's relatively cost effective in the sense that it doesn't require a lot to implement, especially if it's just being used on the site itself. But there is a lot of investment happening on using this gas that's being produced to capture and utilize more widely regionally. So this is one that is interesting. There aren't too many examples, but a large scale on this being implemented, but it is something that as the technology develops and kind of the program develops, would like to see more of this across the county.
Madam CAO, you have your hand up.
Thank you. It may be that I'm simply out of the loop on this. My acquaintance with this technology is a little bit dated, but what I recall from it was that it was highly technical and very finicky. And just you really needed to have an operator that was very committed to this and had the right kind of operation to really make it worth their while. So I think, people have been trying to do this for a very long time, and it hasn't really caught on in a big way. I'm not, as I say, up to date on exactly what goes in behind that, and maybe some information has changed, but this is one where if we were, trying to prioritize the things that we wanted to pursue the most, I don't know if I would put this one near the top. The biomass, though, if there was a biodigester and people were trying to produce power with biomass, Greene County has some land that might lend itself to the production of biomass, and it was less suitable for other crops, but I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble.
Yeah, I just want to back up what Madam CEO said, because I have been affiliated with several of them, and she's absolutely right. They're cost prohibitive, and they're very finicky. The product going into them has to be exact. Once you got a formula, you got to stick with it, or else it just falls apart on you. Mm-hmm. And it's much like what we have between Georgian Bluffs and Chatsworth. It's just something that the technology has been there for a long time, but it's the cost. And for farmers to do it, they have to be very, very large. The volume to make it work has to be very large. Thank you.
So just a question there for you, Brian. When we're talking biogas here, are we talking the same renewable gas that we were talking about at the biodigester?
Yep, very same.
Thank you.
Some municipalities are actually dumping into these farm ones, but they're not really supposed to be, but they're doing it.
I just kind of wanted to quickly mention this strategy kind of really came out of our conversation with kind of Enbridge, because they are wanting to develop a large scale program and are looking to provide funding really to people wanting to invest in this technology. So they're looking to make this more readily available and really are pushing for it. So this is something that we thought could be a great resource, and there is a lot of capital available for it. So I completely agree. I don't know if this would be the first strategy to implement, but there's definitely a lot of resources and kind of development that's happening within the private sector that could support some of this work. Moving into strategy 15, we want to, this kind of connects to our residential and commercial retrofit that I spoke about in our energy section, but want to allocate a percentage of kind of retrofit cost or revenues created from that program in assisting our agricultural community in developing retrofitting their buildings and becoming more energy efficient. So really we want to focus on developing a program also that encourages retrofits for our ag community. Strategy 16 includes creating a climate adaptation plan for Grey County that includes developing a robust and through risk assessment and adaptation plan to lessen impacts of changing climate on our ag community. This strategy can be kind of taken out and put in for any of our themes, but we really wanted to focus on agriculture here because it's I think our municipalities in the county can play a bigger role in helping our ag community adapt to the impacts of climate change. And we really wanted to identify resources, supports that through an adaptation plan that we could, that can help them become more resilient. So we wanted to focus on maybe creating a more targeted plan, a more targeted adaptation plan that really kind of looks at the needs of this community specifically and kind of looks at how we can help them become more sustainable. And strategy 17 includes the promoting and facilitation of consumption of locally grown products. So this is a strategy that we kind of were well into at the county. There's a lot of work being done by economic development and Philly more specifically to really promote locally grown products through their Made in Grey program. This is to complement that work that's already being done and to find ways to support that work and really connect more to the to locally grown products. So we're reducing our impact on transit, but also helping our local farmers.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Just following up on agriculture, a couple things, and it's all good discussion because now, Hiba, there was a lady that contacted me, and I'm trying to think of it last summer, who was wanting to follow up with regards to different farming practices that sort of capture carbon, or it was more just it takes a bit of time, but it's different farm practices that actually it holds back on releasing carbon. I can't remember the lady, and I told her to follow up with the planning department. Maybe I have to go back to my notes, but it was referring to people that rent their farms out to other farmers, that there are ways and techniques that, that maybe it's better for climate change and stuff. And I'll try to see if I can find that information, maybe get it to you.
Are you speaking to regenerative farming practices?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So regenerative farming practices is something that's kind of a buzzword that's been created as of recently, but it's practices that have been happening within the community for a long time. It includes practices such as no-till agriculture. So really kind of focusing and not disrupting the soil as much so that the soil can capture carbon. That's been the main kind of focus of regenerative farming, but there's a whole bunch of practices that that encompasses that term. And it really just kind of looks at, you know, ensuring that sustainability is kind of the forefront versus, you know, kind of more looking at, you know, other sources.
So there was this lady I spoke to, but there was newer techniques for drought and water. Like there was different techniques that would deal with certain drought patterns or certain more wet area times, and there was even, I think, furthering that. The other point I wanted to raise was I can't remember, there was some documentary I saw there, oh, I'm going to say about a year ago, over in either Sweden or Switzerland, where the farming community, they were, I don't know if it was an island or a certain area that was totally self-sufficient. And so I think they were taking the straw, they were taking different things. The agricultural part of was involved that created heat for the houses, but it also had wind turbines, it had solar, and they were self-sufficient. And I I'll have to see if I can find some information on that. But it was certainly working with the agricultural side and the urban side, working together to come up with unique ways of energy consumption and a number of things. But I'll see if I can find that. I'll do some research and see if I can flip that to you. But it's just thinking outside that box that creates that opportunity to look at ways of organic or organic mass that changes into energy. I know I'm talking with Brian there and but it takes a big project to make it efficient. And this was a project that really was it was a community project that everybody contributed to, but also everybody benefit also that were plugged into the heating system and a number of things. So I'll see if I can find that, but it's just a different way of thinking as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I think if you can, that'd be great. And I just do want to mention that through my conversation, there's a lot of work that's already happening within the farming community in regards to sustainable farming. And so I think one of the priorities as part of the ag section would be to kind of highlight that and really show other members of the community that this is work that's already being done and how beneficial it is, and kind of really make people who are already doing some of this work champions, because that really encourages others to take on some of this work. So I think part of this work will be to really highlight what's already being done by the ag community to kind of do more sustainable farming.
And even goes one other step, even into wood waste. Like if you have, like, you're chipping of your Christmas trees, or you're chipping of wood branches, people's land, wood. There's ways of creating energy out of that too. And thank you.
Councillor Gamble.
Just what kind of backing up what Hiba said there. The last few years, I know the agriculture community has really been enforced behind. As soon as a crop is taken off, like corn in the fall, it used to sit dormant or they plowed it. Well, now they plant right back into that soil and grow a green top on it. And that's called carbon entrapment, which is a big advantage. And then, of course, it's holding moisture in too. So that's going on pretty widely right now.
Sorry, I'm just taking a bit of a note. Moving into our land use section, this section kind of really looks at, focuses on the planning section part, the planning world, and really looks at promoting compact and mixed use development, and really looking at the way we're growing and the way we're developing, and really encouraging more compact development and focusing on the communities that we're creating. So some of the strategies that we've created here, such as strategy 18, really focus on our urban centers and really promote high density development that encourages kind of mixed use. So mixed use is kind of commercial and residential all in one development. And really this encourages people to stay local, stay more compact, and it doesn't require the use of infrastructure such as transportation infrastructure to travel longer distance to get somewhere. If we're developing our urban centers to be more dense, all of the resources and infrastructure required is available in a shorter space, so they'd be able to access that through other means such as active transportation. So really here is to promote the development of density, and it's also to promote the protection of our natural resources. I think Grey County has been blessed with an abundance of natural resources, so really developing more densely in our urban areas kind of protects our natural resources, because we're not developing into those resources. So really focusing on kind of containing and preserving our natural resources, and also integrating our urban centers well, so that so there isn't just kind of they're integrated well, and people are able to utilize the natural resources in a sustainable manner. And part of this will be how to implement this is to really make sustainability and density and kind of these key considerations at the forefront of official plan and zoning documents. So making sure that they're implemented in all of our municipal planning documents, that are the county planning documents, so that as we move into developing in the future, those considerations are there. Strategy 19 includes enhancing and protection of natural assets, wetlands, ecosystems, and sequester carbon. So this is really looking at creating inventories of our natural assets and green spaces, wetlands, and ecosystems, and kind of ensuring that we have strategies and policies in place that really look at the long-term protection of these natural assets. And this can be through tree preservation bylaws, through our natural, through our hazard lands mapping, through all of those mappings, or through the work that the conservation authorities are doing, and really looking at making sure that we are making a concerted effort to track what our natural assets are that currently exist, and making policies to ensure that they are being preserved long term. Are there any thoughts on kind of the land use piece? We're moving into our last two themes, so you won't have to listen to me too much longer. So our second last theme is energy, and really this is looking at promoting renewable energy sources in the county, and not only making those sources available at a corporate level, but also encouraging that at a community level. So making sure that our policies are in place that encourage this type of development, but also providing programs and resources so that residents of our communities can implement more renewable energy sources. So the first strategy includes developing a program to promote and encourage solar on our residential, commercial, institutional, industrial buildings. And so we want to, part of this work is to just kind of ensure that our policies are encouraging this type of development, so there isn't barriers to kind of put these systems in place, but also develop programs that encourage residents to put these on their properties. So one that I've already mentioned is a local, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but it's local improvement charges. So encouraging residents to put this infrastructure on by providing funding from a county perspective or a municipal perspective, and then kind of taxing it through, or getting back some of that money through property taxes. So that's one funding kind of structure that was created, but there is multitude. There's a lot of funding available through the through the federal government, through FCM, to help municipalities develop programs that encourage residents to install solar on their property. So really capitalizing on those funding sources as well. The other strategy includes the other alternative renewable sources. So it encourages the development of renewable energy. And so the other sources that include are hydro energy, wind, and geothermal. Wind is more common. Hydro and geothermal are less common in our area, but ensuring that we have streamlined land use policies, bylaws, regulations, permitting, and procedures that allow residents to develop this infrastructure on their properties or at a larger scale. So really ensuring that there aren't many barriers to developing this renewable energy source.
Yeah, but when you're talking the renewable energy, are you still talking on that solar photovoltaic, the large ground mounted arrays where it takes up so much? Usually you see them out in the country, they're taking up a lot of farmland. So is that still being promoted?
That is one. There are smaller scale that we are promoting as well that can be attached to roofs of homes. So it really depends on the scale that's of installation. But yes, that technology is what we're promoting, and it really depends on the scale that people are implementing.
Okay, thank you.
Moving into our last kind of theme, and I apologize, I mislabeled this in the documents that I sent around. So it's actually strategy 22, 23, and 24. So my apologies on that, but I've labeled the slides with the correct strategy. So if you'd like to follow along, but this is one that waterways and shorelines was a theme that we included later on in our process, as it was identified by the public as something that is a priority. And so we wanted to ensure that we were making sure that we were addressing this concern. And so what we've developed here essentially internally is policies around the protection of our waterways and shorelines, and really developing education policies and kind of programs to teach residents about the impact of flooding on local infrastructure and how they can, what they can do to kind of adapt their infrastructure to the flooding risk, and potentially mitigate that, the damages to the properties. So the first strategy we've developed is develop a monitoring program that helps manage its current shorelines and identify areas that are prone to erosion. So all three strategies in this theme rely heavily on our conservation authorities and our conservation partners, really because they are doing a lot of this work already, and we want to support them in their work that they're doing. And a lot of this strategies also includes kind of mapping and technical work. So they're already kind of doing a lot of this work and you know, providing those resources to the county. So we want to ensure that we're helping them, but we want to develop a monitoring program that just kind of looks at what our shorelines are currently, and then work with our conservation authority to identify areas that are prone to flooding, and just make residents and public and municipalities aware of that, and make sure that we include policies that potentially speak to that, to those areas. The second strategy in this theme include updating our county hazard land mapping to further clarify and strengthen areas of the county that are prone to flooding. This kind of speaks to what I was just talking about in the previous strategy, but really updating our hazard land mapping to just clarify and really identify on an annual or continual basis where areas of the county are prone to flooding. And lastly, we want to do work around conservation and protection of our wetlands. So this is identified as a key concern for members of the public. So we really want to identify through mapping and through the work that the conservation authorities are doing on areas in the county where there is significant wetland loss, and develop a program that encourages conservation. Really this speaks to education as a key component of this, really educating members of the public, different sectors about the importance of wetland preservation and conservation. And so the key focus here is working with our conservation authorities on the work that they're doing, supporting their programs, and then really the education and awareness piece around kind of how to preserve these for the future.
Councillor Gamble first, and then Madam CAO. I see you both have your hands up.
Yeah, I'm very disalarmed that you're referring to conservation. I belong to Saugeen Conservation for a number of years, and I really believe in them. I think they're harm in the whole here. But now that the province has basically defunded them, I'm really scared of what this last part of what you discussed is just going to not be there no more. I don't know what you've looked at or discussed, but it's an alarming trend, really. Thank you.
If Hiba, maybe Randy or I can speak to that. I think we're still waiting for the specific regulations to come out, but it's our hope that through formally adopted strategies like this, that will provide the foundation for us to enter into agreements with the Conservation Authority to be able to have work like this continue. But Randy, you can maybe speak to it in more detail.
Yeah, so this stems back to, I think it was Bill 229 and Schedule 8 specifically of that. And as Kim indicated, we're still waiting for some details around the regulations with respect to what that could look like in terms of core service work that's identified for conservation authorities, and what municipalities can enter into agreements with conservation authorities on to continue some of the important work that conservation authorities do. And so, as Kim indicated, depending on where those regulations land, we're hoping that there's flexibility in them to be able to for municipalities to be able to work with conservation authorities to still enter into agreements and work on strategies, just what Hib has indicated, if that is not going to be now part of what the province is now calling core services. So we're hoping that there will be flexibility, so that, because it would vary and depend on each conservation authority area in terms of what services that municipalities would rely on. So we're hoping that it's will be left more up to the conservation authorities and the municipalities to work those details out, as opposed to prescribing a list of only certain items that they can enter into agreements with. That's our hope and our desire, and we'll see when the regulations come out for sure.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. You mentioned about updating county floodplain mapping. Is it the county that does that, or is it the Conservation Authority, or is it a combination of both?
Sorry, Randy, if you want to speak to that.
Sure. Yeah. So we definitely rely on conservation authorities for that baseline data and information. Counties and municipalities have to implement it through our official plan documents and zoning bylaws, etc. But absolutely, we're relying on the conservation authorities to identify that mapping initially, and then municipalities are just the conduits to implement that mapping through their planning documents.
My understanding, Madam Chair, is that there is a difference between floodplain mapping in Grey County versus, say, Bruce County. I've never fully understood what that difference is. Can you speak to that at all, Randy?
Yeah, there are even differences amongst conservation authorities in terms of, and in specific areas where there may be more detailed mapping because of historic issues like fragile ice and other things like that, that maybe some other communities don't experience. So it does vary in terms of the areas that are prone to flooding. But again, we rely on the conservation authorities to provide that data and that information. And so in terms of differences between Bruce County and Grey County, I know there's parts in Bruce County that are even outside of conservation authority areas. So for example, North Bruce Peninsula is outside of the conservation authority. And I know that North Bruce Peninsula at the time was working with conservation to try to come up with similar type mapping, which resulted in some controversies from what I understand based on reading media and other things like that. So it's just trying to but in terms of actual differences, like I know that some conservation authorities have access to more technology than maybe some other conservation authorities. For example, Grey Sauble, I think, has the ability to look at data and imagery through 3D analysis and be able to do that mapping at a more accurate level. We also have been able to capture in some parts of our county through the National Disaster Mitigation Program, LIDAR data, which is really accurate elevation data. Pretty much a stretch all along our shoreline, we now have data for. So I think it all depends on the level of data, background data that we have to be able to provide some of that detailed mapping. So some areas are less detailed than others. So for example, in Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, they've identified not necessarily regulated area mapping, but it's mapping that is used to review whether or not it's in a regulated area or not. Whereas in the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, like I said, they have more access to GIS data and other resources to be able to make their data a bit more accurate. So they've actually mapped out regulated areas and hazard land mapping. So it depends on the conservation authority. And I think part of that would be, let's look at working together to support to get all at the same level of the data that we rely on and utilize to make decisions as between the county and local municipalities. And can we work to support conservation authorities to get to the same level, so to speak, in terms of data reliability and accuracy.
Thank you.
Madam CAO.
Thanks. Just a couple of comments. One, with regard to shoreline erosion, again, my understanding of the shorelines is that they are kind of dynamic systems that respond to changes in water levels and things like that. I'm just wondering if there's a little bit of refinement there about the prevention of shoreline erosion, because I think there is a school of thought that says that what we're really aiming for here is more naturalized shorelines that are better able to cope with fluctuations in water level, are more stable habitats for animals and that sort of thing. So I just put that out there for consideration. Maybe there's a little bit of tweaking there. The other piece that I would like to see in this strategy has to do with water quality and preserving the quality of the water in the bay. Significant storm events, we've all seen what that looks like when we don't have the capacity in the storm sewers. They overtop, that water goes right into the bay or into streams. The same thing with the tile drains in the fields and that. So there's a lot of infrastructure that we should maybe be looking at to ensure that it actually has the capacity and the capability to manage the kind of storm events that we're seeing now, where you get a whole lot of water in a really short period of time, to try and minimize that runoff going into the bay or into another water body unchecked and unfiltered. You know, do we need to put more stormwater management, more filtration in a little bit further upstream so that the water just doesn't go ripping down there 100 miles an hour with every bit of garbage it finds in its path? So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Kim, especially in regards to the water quality. I know there's work that's being done by Gray Sobel that they release their report cards every year but the report cards specifically look at the quality of wetlands. I'm not sure of any work that's being done around the water quality for the bay, but I think that's a really good point and something we could look into.
That's what comes out of my tap. I want it to be clean.
I think we all do.
Okay, excellent report, Heba. What does staff need from this committee going forward? Do you need a decision on what strategies we want to move ahead with, or exactly what's needed now?
Really, what my intent today was to really have this discussion. So I think what we've already been doing has been so helpful. Really, if there are other thoughts that you haven't been able to kind of address through this conversation, please send that along to me. What we're hoping is that all of this feedback that we received today and hopefully we'll receive will feed into our draft plan. And then we will, once that draft plan is completed, bring it back to this committee, and hopefully that draft plan will address a lot of the concerns that were brought up, or some changes that are required. So I think what I would hope is that if you have any other thoughts or any other ideas that or something that we're missing, or you're not sure of something, please put that into an email and send that along to me so that we can incorporate that into our draft plan, which is the next piece of document that should be coming to this committee.
Okay, excellent. Councillor Desai, did I see your hand flash in front of me briefly?
That was a mistake. Sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Before we move on, I just wanted to make a quick piece. Sorry, my last one is a slide is a thank you, but I did really want to quickly touch on the implementation portion of this plan. So as Kim identified, we're going to be speaking to the municipal CAOs and to kind of speak about how we can move forward in terms of implementation. But I would love to hear from this committee as well, just kind of start getting some thoughts on what they think it would be required for implementation of this plan, really kind of identifying needs and concerns. I think the success of this plan has been mentioned by our warden and other members is that really the more we can collaborate and work with our partners, the more successful this plan is going to be. So we're starting to have a lot of those conversations now. So if for some thoughts, if you can think about what would be required and what would be needed in terms of implementation, and send that along to me, that would be great, as we're starting to have some of those conversations. But other than that, I appreciate the time you've given me. Thank you so much.
Okay, so did you have this other section 5, relative cost characterization? Were you going over that today as well?
That was just a reference document that was sent along. It just kind of speaks to the funding piece and the relative cost piece that's associated with each strategy. The consultant created this document to help explain how they came up with that number and where that number really comes, like how, give examples of other municipalities, what they've done and what it's costed them, and then kind of try to provide us with those resources. So really, that's a document that's a reference document for you as you read through some of the strategies to understand where that funding cost is coming from.
Excellent. Okay. And I see I have missed section 4, other business. Was there any other business today?
No.
Seems CAO shake her head. Thank you. Okay. So the next is a reference document for all of us, and I'm sure everyone has already read. Next meeting dates, someone from staff will be advising us then. Excellent. Unless there's any other questions or comments from committee, I will ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
Madam Chair, if I might.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
I just want to say I'm probably echoing comments that I made at the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force, but I just want to thank staff. What a lot of work. And I'm really getting an education because honestly, I don't know anything about about this stuff. And it's so interesting to learn, and staff have done a terrific job. I don't think there's a stone left unturned here. But anyways, thank you for that. And I want to acknowledge the work of staff, and particularly Hiba here.
Yes, bravo.
Yes, thank you. You're quite right. It's a lot of work. I'm also on our township's climate action group, and it's a lot of information to take in that's somewhat new.
Yes.
Anyway, if no other comments, motion to adjourn. Councillor Hutchison, seconder. Mr. Warden, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.